I want to show you how we would create anything then, not just tasks, but any of these, and make sure that we're all on the same page together about how we create new items. Because I'm going to go to my site actions, and I'm going to say that I would like to add some other options, some other content. And at this point, we should feel pretty comfortable with both libraries and lists. If we've been to all the sessions, all of my different libraries I can create. We mostly create document libraries. I've referred you briefly to asset libraries, which is a better place to keep pictures and multimedia. Pictures alone can go in picture libraries. And since you're poking around here, don't fall in love with the slide library because it's gone in the next version of SharePoint. It's a nice feature, and it just didn't get loved up enough, I guess is what I would say. If we take a look at lists, then we have some of the built-in things that appear on every site, like we automatically get an announcements list and a calendar, but you might want another announcements list. You might want a second calendar, a third. You're not limited to one of any of these types of things per site. Here's the tasks that we added a moment ago. And it might be that if you're looking at tasks, and you're thinking, well, what I really need to do is have a series of tasks that are for follow-up or a series of tasks that are for management, you might take a look at issue tracking, which is very similar. It's not the same, but it's really meant for issues. So you could think of the difference between the two as tasks would commonly be, oh, I have a project, I'll look at a tasks list. And issue tracking might be, I'm running a help desk, we're managing issues. So I want to do issue tracking. It's that sort of a breakdown. But imagine now you're in the process of developing something new in a project and you're having it tested. Well, you're in a project and you might want to do issue tracking. So it's not that there's a hard and fast line, but those are the different kinds of things that you can do. We also have the ability to add some items that are from some additional capability that you all bought called Quest. So we have, Quest roll-up lists and those kinds of things. And for help with those, you can have a conversation with the IT folks. But it's normally to say, I want to solve a particular problem in how I'm doing a design, and they'd go, oh, we have a part for that. It's called a roll-up list, for example. You can also do a survey here. So these are all of the different kinds of things that you can build in. So before you say, I want to go in and create a contacts list, I'm going to start from scratch, I would encourage you instead to make sure there's not a contacts list already. Okay? But if the list we want doesn't exist here at all, there's nothing like the list that we want to create, then your alternative here is to create a custom list. So if we wanted to have a list, for example, that was a particular kind of inventory, there's no inventory here. So I'm going to create a custom list. And we're going to call this inventory. This is one of two major ways to be able to create a custom list. Now, when you start, there's just not a lot here because what we have is we have a title. Now, you probably already know that SharePoint is also tracking at least 4 other fields, 4 other columns of information. Who created an item, when they did that, who modified it last, and when they did that. So we have title, those 4, and an attachment, and there are actually a few more as well. But we can create new columns right here very, very easily to be able to modify our list. So one way to do it really easily, there's a Create Column button here. So let's try this. This is going to open up a page that allows me to specify the information that I want to provide. The first thing I'm going to provide is a column name up at the top. You want to create good column names. You don't get a chance to go back and edit these over and over again. And they're going to show up in reports, they're going to show up in workflows, they're going to show up at the top of columns. These need to be brief and user understandable. So I want to have a part number. And that's about the least I'm going to do. Now, if I have really long part numbers, I'll use up more characters, but part of it also is I don't want to have a 15-character description over 2 characters of text. Like I don't want to put state abbreviation, for example, to just do a ridiculous one. If I do this, but everything that falls underneath this is WA, MI, MA, IA, that kind of thing, that's kind of silly, right? You just put state, for example. So I want to make sure that I'm not using more characters than I need, but enough. And you can't use things like the pound sign here, so you'll get used to doing things like that. The next thing we need to do is choose the kind of information that we want to store in this column. So I can store a single line of text, that's something like a title, or a part number. I can store multiple lines of text, that's something like the description and the tasks list we created a few minutes ago. I can create a drop-down menu to choose from or a set of text boxes to choose from. If I know what the choices are, I can use choice. I can enter a number, and this is where we want to be careful with the idea of a number. Number here means something you would add, subtract, multiply, or divide with. A real quantity, a real number, not a social security number, not a zip code, not a label that happens to be made up of numbers or digits. So if it's a real number, like I have 27 of these items in stock, you would choose number, but part numbers are not like that. They're made up labels. Currency is different than number, date and time, or date or time. I can look up information someplace else on this site, so I could have a list of customers and go choose a customer out of a list, or a list of members of this site and choose one of them. That's how that assigned to field worked in the tasks list, is I could choose somebody who actually is already part of the site. Checkbox, yes for checked, no for unchecked. I could assign it to a person or group, another kind of lookup, okay? I could decide that what we're going to store in here is a hyperlink or a picture that we're going to calculate based on something else, like I know how many we have and what we paid for them, so I'd like to calculate the total value. And that's about where you're going to stop most days. You don't need to worry about external data or manage metadata as a site owner. So I could enter here in a description full part number, including all prefixes and suffixes, let's say. So nobody enters short part numbers or internal part numbers. I'm going to require that if you're going to enter something in this inventory, you better at least know its part number. So I'm going to say yes. I won't say yes if I will allow somebody to enter an item in here before we actually have a part number for it. So this is about not only does every part have to have a number, but at the time somebody enters it, will they know what it is? And I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to also say in this case that I don't want anything listed more than once. I'm going to enforce unique values. So if we already have part number alpha, A5792, I don't want anybody entering A5792 again. And let's say we know that our part numbers are no more than 12 characters. I can do that there. We will have no default value, and I'll say OK. And it says that I've chosen unique values, so it's going to be indexed, and I'm going to say OK, and that's fine. And now I have a place for a part number as well. So that's how I would add a column to a list if I don't have one already. That's one of the places I can do that. Now, the other place I can get to that same information is I can go to list settings, and now I see that everything that's available to me, my created by, modified by, and so on, and I could create a column right here, and it's going to take us right back to that same page that we saw a little bit ago. And now I could say that I want to enter quantity, QTY, and that's a number. And the reason it just flipped when I did that is it creates some new options based on my choosing number. Okay, we get to determine then some things about how that number's formatted, for example. Number in stock or quantity in stock. In stock. Require that it contains information? No, not necessarily. We might have something that belongs in our inventory, but we have haven't counted them yet. We know that it needs to be there. It's not that there are 0 we haven't counted. So we're going to leave this. And I could say that we can't have a negative number in inventory. We can't have physically 0 of anything or less than 0. And I'm going to say that there are no decimal places, that we don't have partial contents. We have something or we don't have it. And I'm going to add this to my default view, and we're going to say OK. And because I started here on my site settings page, it takes me back to my site settings page. There's my title, my part number, my quantity that I included. Title was required by SharePoint. I added part numbers required. That's all looking really good. So here are my settings. Now, if I just want to go back to this item, I can go right back here to inventory, following my breadcrumbs, and skip right back here. Title, part number, quantity, and so on. So this is how we add columns to a list. I can also change column properties later on. If I wish to do that, then what I need to do in order to do that is I can modify my view, but I can't modify a column. If I want to modify a column, I need to go back to my list settings, click on the column. Maybe I want to say quantity in stock for some reason. So I'm going to click on quantity, and it takes me right back so that I can modify this and say OK. This is also where I would delete this column if I no longer wanted it. If I delete it, it's going to say all the data stored in the column will be permanently deleted, and it really means this. You don't ever delete a column unless you're really sure that you will want it gone now and forever. Remember, you have control of the views. You can just choose not to display a column. But you delete a column, all the data gets thrown away. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to go back to my inventory. And now it says quantity in stock instead of quantity. Questions about creating a custom list, adding columns to a list, modifying columns, or deleting a list?
Jenny, I'm wondering, and absolutely good advice about deleting columns and being very, very careful. But if you do delete a column, will it show up in the recycle bin, or is there any way to get it back when you say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that?
Well, let's just go ahead and add a couple folks here. This is always good. I'm going to go into data sheet view, and we're going to add a couple items. So this is our inventory, and we'll have and let's say we have 10 of these in stock. We're just adding, and we have an attachment here automatically. So and let's do one more. So we've got some stuff. That looks good, and I really like working in that data sheet view. So now let's go into our list settings, and let's delete a column. For example, the part numbers. Say we just decided we didn't need them anymore. And we go back to our list, our inventory, and they really are pretty much gone. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to try to get this back, right? So let's go back to our site. Actually, just down at the bottom of the quick launch, there's our recycle bin. Take a look.
Nothing there.
Oops.
Gone.
It's really gone.
Good to know.
And I say that, and I think this is important because what happens sometimes is as you're creating custom lists, and you put something in there and then it doesn't quite work the way you thought it was going to work, and you think, oh, I'll just get rid of this. But remember, of course, we're all, moving and growing at the same time. So as you're thinking, that column's not getting used, somebody else in your business unit is thinking, oh, what we could do with that column of data, but they don't tell you. They're thinking at the same time. So I'm slow to delete. I'd rather just say, let's go ahead and, figure out a way to be able to have a view that doesn't show that data.
Right.
And then, if 7 months from now I go take a look and say, actually, I don't want that. Okay, I'm pretty clear. We've had enough time. And because imagine now if I had actually typed in the whole inventory. It's gone. We have to type it all again.
Right.
Okay.